When I first started buying gold, you had to walk to the local coin shop uphill both directions. But turns out it was worth it. It's really easy to pick a window of time to make it seem like gold has either done really well or really poorly. So if you want to tell the story of it outperforming the S&P, well, you'd pick 2000 through 2020. If you want to tell the story of it doing really poorly, well, then you'd pick something like 2011 through 2019. I've always felt pretty comfortable with gold. It's been a pretty good run. I've had years where it was down. I didn't worry too much about it. I don't worry about it going down in the future. And to give that statement a little bit of context, I bought my first gold coin in 2008. I didn't start buying on a schedule until late in 2013, but I had a handful of coins by that time, and I always had an eye on the price throughout. So what does that even really matter? The question of whether gold is a good short-term investment and the question of whether gold is a good store of wealth, I think they're both pretty easily answered by looking at the charts. But how you interpret those charts is really up to you. Now, I thought it would be interesting to simply lay out the price of gold at the beginning of June since I started buying in 2008. And if we zoom in on that first purchase in June of 2008, I bought a Canadian maple leaf for $900 spot. So spot price of gold was $900. The Canadian maple leaf that I bought earlier this month, 13 years later, well, that was at a spot price of $1,800. So if you do the math, it has doubled. So some people can hear information like that and think that gold has performed really well, and other people can hear that same bit of information and think that it's done really poorly. You can factor in inflation, you can adjust for cost of living, and then all of a sudden it doesn't seem like 13 years to actually double doesn't sound so great. But if I would have been saving that in cash in a savings account like a lot of people do, well, then it wouldn't have done anything at all. It would have been exactly the same. That $900 that I stocked away would still be $900. It doesn't matter if you try to adjust it for inflation, it would have been the same. What I would have gained was a little bit of interest. Now, the average rate of return on a savings account, I guess I should have looked this up. I think it's something like 0.05% on average. So every $1,000, I guess I would have had another $5, and that would have compounded. But it's not very exciting growth when we're talking about $5 a year. So let's just look at some numbers for the spot price of gold over the last 13 years. Now this is going to be the spot price for early June for each of those 13 years, and I did round a little bit. I'm going to get within about $25. So again, as I mentioned, in 2008, the spot price of gold was about $900. A year later, it was $1,000. 2010, it had gone up to $1,200, and in 2011, in June, it was $1,500. Now, 2011 is when things got a little bit weird for gold. Actually, got really good for gold, depending on how you look at it, and that's when we had the all-time highs. Now, in 2013, it came down to $1,400 in June, and in 2014, it was $1,250. Now, June in 2013 was another weird month. I believe it started off at about $1,400, and by the time the month was out, it was down to about $1,200. Again, 2014, back to $1,250. 2015, $1,200, pretty boring. 2016, $1,300, still pretty boring. 2017 was the same, $1,300. 2018 was the same, $1,300. Where am I at? 2019, still $1,300. And that's when it started to get interesting again, because June of 2019 is when the prices of gold really started to take off. Now, if you go 1 year after that, last year in June, it was $1,750. 2021, which is now $1,800. Now, throughout this period of time, I was investing time and money into other assets, stocks, businesses, real estate, and a few other things. And a lot of those assets, I guess, outperformed gold. But every bit of cash that I saved did not. And I think you could say the same thing about any car that I purchased or any other toy in general. They would have all depreciated over this time. So what we're looking at here is a realistic view of what gold really is. It's a solid way to save. I get questions from people who are new to this, and they're wondering if they should buy gold if their selling horizon is only a year or two away. And that's really a hard question, because some people might be horrified to learn that gold lost, say, 25% of its value from June of 2012 to 2 years later in June of 2014. Others aren't going to be so worried about that kind of risk, and I imagine there are a few optimists in the group who are going to look at these charts, look at 2019 to 2020 and see a 35% increase and think, hey, maybe that could happen too. All of these cases are realistic possibilities, but I think the wider you look, the more years you pile on to add to the data, the more realistic your outlook becomes. Now, I don't need gains on gold year to year, but it's good to see that over the time that I've been purchasing from 2008 until 9, again, the spot price of gold has doubled. And I know there are a lot of people who leave comments here who've been buying gold a lot longer than I have, since the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. Anyone who started buying in, say, 2001, 2002, well, they were at the beginning of a 9-year gold bull run. So they were probably buying at more like $300 spot price. So if you keep that in mind, it's really clear how this is just a great long-term hold. And if you look specifically year to year, you will see some drops, and that should be enough to let you know that it's not just an investment for quick gains. Now, I'm going to want to hear from you in the comments. When did you start buying? How has it done? But I'm going to switch topics for a minute because I've had a few people ask if I'll do a Q&A. Now, I have a feeling that the Q&A questions are going to be like, what's in your field notebook? And I get that a lot. There are a few of them that I actually will answer, but I wanted to open this up for some of those questions. I don't know if the very first Q&A will be live. Again, I just want to say that there's no ego behind this. I don't think that just because I have a channel, I have some kind of super insight on the gold market or anything like that, but I know people are curious about a few different things. So if you have a general comment, just do what you normally do and drop your comment in. And then if you have something that you want to be covered in a Q&A session, well, put something like QA colon or Q&A colon in the comment, and then whatever the question is, and I will put that in a list and try to get to it. And that should do it. So if you're still with me, thank you. I always appreciate your time. Take care.